Today I drove my 7-year-old son James into town to go Halloween shopping. I didn't have to buy any candy this year because we live in a cul-de-sac out in the middle of a farming community on the outskirts of the city. I moved last year because I had divorced my wife and lost my old house along with the custody of James. It's rather the shit end of the stick, but James and I love Halloween. It's one of the few times a year that Tracy finds it acceptable for my only son to come visit me. James stays with her on every other holiday throughout the year, his birthday, and everything else in between. I get to see him only on my birthday, and this week preceding Halloween, unless that a high-bitch court finds it suitable for him to come spend the night every once in a while. Frankly, I'm surprised she let him come shopping with me. Upon pursuing the aisles, James showed a strongly affinity to a flamboyant green and purple Buzz Lightyear costume. It's really typical for a kid to have an eye for the most expensive thing on the rack. I didn't have the heart to say no to this bottomless blue eyes. He also picked out the house decorations. I know we won't be getting any trick-or-treaters out where I live, but adoring the exterior of our home was always one of our favorite things to do together. It looks like James and I will be having some competition for the best Halloween decorations award, which sadly, in this neighborhood, is only a pat on the back. When I lived with James and my ex-wife, he and I won the trophy every year since he was 3. Residents aside, my next-door neighbor is really giving us a run for our money. He did quite the splurge on decorations. He must have ordered everything online, because aside from the cliche Happy Halloween banner and the festival treasures found on his house and lawn, were nowhere to be seen in the store where James and I shopped, which sold only festive decor. The fellow's garage door sat below a strand of kite string on which hung dozens of expensive-looking bones and skulls. He also placed several other bones sticking straight up out of his lawn. There was no color or detail, just random bones placing here and there, stewing into the unkempt lawn. Truly, though, he's nothing. While walking through my house at dusk outside the dining room window, I noticed a quick flicker of movement dash in and out of my peripheral as I was preparing for James's weekly long stay. I inspected. I didn't know if I should be glad that I did. I walked back in front of the window and saw the same animation, but this time in the center of my vision. I walked back away from the window, and slowly I peeked out from the corner of the glass. I made out the shape at the very top of the person's head peering over the top of my fence, and it seemed to be watching me. Whoever it was ducked down right away as they realized that we had made eye contact. I backed away from the window. I don't know why. I crawled over to the family room window, which is about 15 to 20 feet to the left, but facing the same direction as the dining room window. I still knelt, but curiously grasped the curtain. I ever so slowly pulled back the cloth only to gaze upon the masked fellow who was snooping around behind my property. This time, I saw his entire head. The mask had a gaping, dangling mouth similar to the mask used to the Scream series. The only difference was that the jaw of this particular mask was swaying back in the wind and had teeth, long, thin, fang-like growths that appeared to be almost like strands hanging from the mouth of a whale, though few in number. The expression on the mask was plain, and the color was rather pale. With a slight gray distortion, it didn't have a goofy smile or an intimidating stare, just a mouth hanging open with a couple perfectly rounded, beady little chameleon eyes eerily shaded. After about 10 seconds of observation, one of the eyes appeared as if it was steadily drifting off, away from where it was asphyxiated, and very slowly began to scan to the left. As soon as he seemed to lock onto where I was, he quickly disappeared. I don't really know my neighbor, much less where he gets all his decorations. I noticed a new ornament of sorts in front of the door today. It was a comically placed where the bowl of candy where he was too lazy to answer the door for trick-or-treaters. Behind it was a large white piece of bones bound to the wall of his house. On it was written in nearly illegible chicken scratch, "Take one." The whole sign had bloody fingerprints smeared on it. More convincing yet, the bloody tape in the bloody wall near the entire wall was smeared in a brownish red. Spooky. The streams of blood that ran from the handprints were strangely enough dry. I didn't know they were made of novelty blood. They wouldn't dry like that. I've only ever spoken to the guy once, and it was around the same time that I moved. He seemed rather distraught. As I approached him, I asked him if everything was alright. He said that he was late for work, which was odd because it was around 8:30 at night. I asked him where he worked, and he revealed to me that he was a biologist that worked at the military base with no details. It was strange. Every time I saw him after this encounter, his pants had traveled up his ankles another centimeter. Midlife growth spurt, I guess. He was henceforth stumbling around awkwardly and tripping over himself. My other neighbors mocked him from time to time. I remember one specific instance when he was watering his shrubbery and one of his knees gave out, backwards. Kind of like a large bird's leg, a pelican, or perhaps a heron. It looked excruciating to me, but he just walked it off. I've only ever seen him outside again once at the display, but it was a month ago, and last month as I walked to the mailbox late one afternoon, I heard his kid cry frantically, screaming almost. I continued into the evening. The noise eventually stopped though. I was having trouble sleeping through that horrifying racket. I seriously hope he had his parenting privileges revoked. However, I've never seen his kids. Let's hope he's an uncle. Ever since James arrived earlier this week, he had simply adored the idea of removing his costume. Little Buzz had been running rampant throughout the house quoting Toy Story. He hadn't distorted once since he put it on, save for when I demanded he allow me to wash it, because he was quite literally rolling around outside in the dirt. I haven't seen any more of this weirdo in the mask lately. Probably some mischievous kid from the neighborhood behind mine. It's called the Soup too, just a bigger one. There's a dirt road that accompanies an irrigation canal separating the two neighborhoods. My house is the furthest house from the main road, and the canal runs parallel to my fence. I don't know of any bridge he could have used to cross from, but I never looked back there, and I don't particularly care to. Neighbor Man brought a new ornament, 200 feet of life to accompany the 200 feet of intestines he had previously thrown all over the tree in the front yard. The light coexists uniquely with the prior decor though. All I could smell when I went outside was the burning odor of the sizzling ensemble of mixed-match decorations hanging from the tree. The moisture of those oddly genuine-looking innards had adhered to his archive festive lights, producing a deep red glow. Intentional or not, the smell was almost enough to echo a complaint out of me. Almost. Come to think of it, the smell wasn't so bad. Almost like a barbecue. I'm going insane. No simple words can properly describe what I believe I have witnessed. As the sun was setting this evening, I got another glimpse of this masked man. What I saw now was not all what I had described as a mask. I was sitting in my living room reading. The bay window in my living room overlooks the entire street, and I had my blinds open. I had startled and looked up at the window towards the nearly disbanded sun because I had heard what sounded like an asthmatic man gasping for air through a megaphone over the top of a vocaled, frantic cat. I stood up from my couch and walked briskly towards the window. I cupped my hands above my eyes to deter the sunlight and pressed my face towards the window, and I saw it. It was pursuing a small cat. It ran like an ostrich. Where it was not bald and discolored, it was spotted with long patches of spindly hairs and networks of pulsating blue veins. Thinning, isolating strands of gray hair flat against its flaky, decomposing head. Its flapping, low-hung chin keeping rhythm with its bouncing stride as the sprinting thing began to overtake the creature built for agility. Ultra thin, ultra broad shoulders, thoughtfully butting up and down in harmony with its branch-like arms, easily giving it a 5-foot reach. Mammoth hands, chopsticks fingers, and those repulsive chameleon eyes, buckets of jewels spit impatiently from behind its hellish teeth. Altogether, I observed an 8.5-foot freak show with greasy hair practically leaping from yard to yard, chasing this poor kitten for a reason obstinately behind simple substance. The cat approached for a fence on the left side of the street. It led towards a delusion of safety. The beast proceeded to effortlessly jump the sidewalk over the lawn and snatch the animal from the top of the fence with its talon-like claws. The cat didn't stand a chance, nor did it even manage to voice a squeal. The thing disappeared into the shadows with his meal, an unforgettable 2.5 seconds. Though I thought of my son, he could have very well been in the place of the plaintive animal. No, I should never say a thing. Regardless, what am I to do? Forgo what little time I have throughout the year with my boy because the scary monsters are loose? Tell my ex-wife that my neighborhood is in the middle of nowhere has become too dangerous for our son to stay with me? While I rifle and hunt the thing myself? No matter. With only 2 days until Halloween, I doubt there will be any trouble. I thought about calling the police, but for what exactly? I definitely couldn't call in and report a burglar, or even anything human for that matter, because they wouldn't be looking for what needed to be caught. No one can know. Earlier tonight, my neighbors threw a street-wide costume party at their place down at the entrance of the house. I didn't go because I had to work late, and after I picked up James from his friend's house, we anticipated having a game night with just the two of us. Sometime during the night, James took a bathroom break. He was gone for over 15 minutes. When he returned, he seemed excited to inform me that he looked out the living room window in between the blinds and saw that he described as a really tall, weird-looking person with a bag, running patiently to the house where the party was being held, empty bag in hand. According to James, it would disappear into the backyard of the house, and seconds later bolt out of the yard with a full bag and tear off towards the neighbor's house, wearing a costume. It repeated this process several times, each time wearing a different costume than before. He said on this last round, it stopped in the middle of the street, cocked its head to the right slightly, and its right eye slid to the side of its head and stared at him, as if they weren't blinds between them. He said it would turn its head 180 degrees and lock eyes contact with him, and then its casual mouth sluggishly transformed into a probing expression, into the widest smile he'd ever seen. Millions of teeth were his exact words. He said that its smile had hastily collapsed, dropping the chin to a visible freefall, which ended with a swinging slap of its chest. It then darted off to its reclusive neighbor's yard, and that was when James decided to come alert me of his findings. I thought of that horrid monster smiling at my beautiful boy. I despised the idea. I tried to envision what that particular smile might look like, though, but I really couldn't. I didn't think of flapping maw, that gargantuan that had the muscle to maneuver that flailing shed in the first place. Then again, it had to eat sometime. More decorations were stealthily, as always, erected by the mysterious neighbor, a couple dozen or so skeletons, all the different sizes, all dressed in cliché Halloween attire. There were a Marilyn Monroe skeleton, a Darth Vader skeleton, an Abraham Lincoln skeleton, so on and so forth. Every one of them were strung up on the back of his neck, feet swinging, head looking down. I really wanted to ask this guy how he comes up with all this, where he gets it all. Perhaps if he knows that last night's rain washed up the color off most of his knickknacks. Gotta hand it to him, though. That slew of morbid decor and the combination of his filth rundown cobweb-covered home emits a true horror movie's feel. It's now just past midnight. I just got finished with work. I brushed my teeth, and now the doorbell is ringing again, and again, and again. Reluctantly, I rise up and walk towards the door. I open it. My neighbor. No, the freak next door, but the fellow who lives behind me on the other side of the canal. He's disgruntled. He's practically out of breath and is threatening me about something, but none of it is sinking in because one of the skeletons hanging from my neighbor's tree, a newcomer, is staring right at me, its jaw unhinged, unlike the others. It's smaller than the other skeletons, and appears to be dripping with something. Moonlight reveals to me its eyes. Big, blue eyes. I turn to face the man yelling at me. You listening over there? Oh, yeah? The hell you trying to pull? Gave my wife a heart attack with that mask. Apparently my son and I aren't the only ones who had spotted the neighborhood missing link. How could he possibly confuse that thing with me? And don't try to smooth talk your way out of this one, pal. I saw you jumping clean over that fence of yours. The hell you managed to do that? I was still wandering and crawling right back to your basement. It's dark and all, but no doubt it was you, pal. I'm terribly sorry, I improvised. I don't know what came over me. If there's something I can do, my heart sank. Wait here. There's no way. I'm running like a fool into my own house because this asshole bangs on my door at 12:15 in the morning to tell me that he saw this thing jump into my basement. With my trembling hands applying convulsion energy into the doorknob, I turned and flung the door wide open to reveal my son, sleeping, facing the wall, just as I had left him. Figures. He's never all the way under the covers like that, but it's still a bit cold in here. Goddamn, though. This guy at my door really does have some nerve. You scared the shit out of me. Sorry, he interrupted. Aw, save it. I ain't got no shits at all about your problems. Just stay the hell away from me and my family, you hear? Yeah, sure. A claiming chuckle digs its way into this angry toad as I recognize those freshly familiar, brimless blue eyes stuffed into the head of that skeleton. I gotta hand it to you, though. I nearly busted out laughing when I saw you running around wearing that kid's Buzz Lightyear costume.